Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Lambasting the Lawyers. And by lawyers, what I mean, of course, are solicitors, right? I also mean attorneys who are members of the bar and who can speak in open court to the judge and be heard. Talking about the barristers, the bombastic barristers, who are the equivalent of attorneys in the Swiss colony called the United States. So I'm talking about lawyers, I'm talking about solicitors, attorneys, and barristers. And of course, I'm including the freaks, creeps that wear black robes, the judges. That's right, the tribunal magistrates, the magistrates, which preside over the kangaroo court, which is called in Geneva, Switzerland, maritime law courts, also known as martial law courts, military tribunal law courts, because we are under the law of the sea, right? Admiralty law. Admiralty law prevails over the land. And it does so because of the streams, creeks, rivers, reservoirs, lakes, canals, bridges, dams, right? Secured perimeters having to do with the port facilities, railroad, trucking, chassis, container, intermodal transportation containers, which go on the sea container shipping, which end up on a truck to be delivered somewhere to your strategic hamlet. I'm talking about maritime law. I'm talking about military law courts. I'm talking about kangaroo courts. I'm talking about courts where grown men and women wear black robes and sit in front of a 13 stripe Swiss flag to show their allegiance to their masters, which would be Swiss Bank Authority, who controls all magistrates in the world, all judges. They're puppets. Puppets. They are nodes on a network. Got it? Get it? Good. Glad you do. Glad you understand. Glad you're a paid member. Paid members of my channel understand what I'm talking about here. All right, so we're going to cover lawyers first, systems that prevail in maritime law throughout all Hunger Games in the world, in the whole world, in the whole world. We are one Pope Leo the 14th, world of poppycock, mendacity, and balderdash, Swiss Bank Authority, City State of Vatican, the Bishop of Rome, the dope of a Pope, Pope Leo, and his Magnifico Humanitas poppycock letter to bishops, which they probably won't read. All right. So let's start with the lawyers. Then we're going to morph to bankers, and we'll touch a little bit on scientists, pseudoscientists, and people who believe in neuromodulation, molecular engineering, CRISPR therapeutics, caribou, biosciences, innovative genomic institutes, people who worship the COVID cult god, the coronavirus, which is 24/7 real ID surveillance. That's what COVID is. COVID, just think in terms of 24/7 human augmentation, tethered to the cloud, tethered to the cloud and tagged like a farm animal on the plantation, on a ranch, a cow, a sheep, a goat. They all are chipped or tagged on their ear. And anyone who got a COVID vaccine or a flu vaccine or a bird flu or a coronavirus or a Omicron variant booster is tethered to the cloud. Okay? All right. So we're going to start with my favorite subject, lying lawyers. Okay. Remember, there's three kinds of lawyers. There's lying, which if you do it under oath is called perjury. There's lying. And there are liars. And then, of course, there's out and out liars, like Scott Erickson. He's an out and out. Or like the management program that doctors use to get paid on COVID. That's out and out lying. That's an outlier of lying. That's extreme lying. That's lying with extreme prejudice. COVID. Any doctor who pimps a vaccine or gets paid to code something to COVID is a criminal, right? And they're being bribed, and perjury is being suborned through financial incentives called prospective payments, which are also known as DRG, diagnostic related grouping. You'll notice that when COVID was all the rage, the influenza flu went away. There were no flu cases because all the doctors did is they just moved the flu over to COVID because they have better reimbursement payment compensation. You see, every profession, whether you're an engineer, an accountant, or whether you're a journalist, pseudo journalist, podcaster, if you're a person who does manicures or pedicures, you have to have a license. And if you have to have a license and you collect money, then you're a professional person. Every profession has linguistical vocabulary, lexicon of terms where they can lie to you, but none more so than our pseudo fake constitutional law system, which doesn't follow any constitution whatsoever. Procedural procedures and protocol govern a courtroom, which is under maritime law authority. All right, so we know there's lying and we know there's liars and there are out and out liars. That means the judges lie, the bailiff lies, the witnesses often lie, the people who testify often lie, and the judge knows it and they never, almost never charge anybody with contempt of court or perjury. It's just sort of allowed under maritime law. Perjury is standard operating procedure. It's perjury, planting of evidence, destruction of evidence that makes maritime law courts run. You know, like the My Lai massacre. Go study the My Lai massacre tribunal case, and you will have a terrific example of how maritime law works. You could also study the Nuremberg war crime trials. They tried judges and they tried generals, and it was a kangaroo court, and the verdicts were decided in advance. There were what we call ex parte communications. If you watch Perry Mason television episodes or you watch Matlock, you'll hear occasional references to the forbidden ex parte communications, strictly forbidden. I'm here to tell you, juxtaposition is telling you after 200 visits to maritime law courtrooms that ex parte communications, which go on in the men's room, in the parking lot, in bordellos, in spa, massage parlors, in golf course, country clubs, on the golf course, in the conferencing rooms at the golf course country clubs, in the reception areas, in taxi cabs, there are ex parte communications. This is, of course, forbidden, and yet I'm telling you it's standard operating procedure for lawyers and attorneys and what we call litigation support people and judges and support people for the judge, including stenographers, to engage in the praxis of ex parte communications. This occurs whenever a party or their lawyer or someone who is connected with a party, third or fourth or fifth level away, meets privately with the judge, magistrate, and or any decision maker regarding a pending or impending case that may or may not be currently underway without the presence and proper noticing of the opposing parties. In other words, the district attorney is not supposed to have meetings with the judge unless the defense lawyer and or the defendant are included in the meeting. I'm here to tell you they have secret meetings all the time. They use the same men's room, they're in the same building, they run into each other all the time, and they do speak and they do discuss what is on the docket. This will include, besides people in the men's room, any telephone call, email, or letters that could be sent between parties but not copied to yet required under ex parte protocol, conversations in hallways and or in the parking lot, like I said, anything and everywhere could be a violation of ex parte communications. But I'm just telling you, as a practical matter, I just hate to pop the bubble, the veneer over this unholy thing called our judicial system, is that they do engage in ex parte communications. This also includes psychologists, and you will find that psychologists are one of the primary ways ex parte communications go on in court. In other words, outside the courtroom, but over at a psychologist office where they're tape recording the conversation without noticing the defendant, and then the judge and the attorney general or assistant district attorney, ADA, can listen to the conversations of the accused prior to their conviction. Yes, I know it's startling. I know it's hard to believe, but if you watch the Lyle and Eric Menendez case, and you see Jerome Oziel and his girlfriend slash patient. They recorded the conversations in his office, and those were played back for law enforcement and district attorney. That was also done with the Susan Atkins suborn perjury, where she was threatened and bribed to agree with a pre-typed up script about the Manson family murders, which was completely false. And later, Susan Atkins recanted signing that pseudo confession. All right, so I want to tell you that it goes on in the Menendez case, went on with the Manson murders, went on with the My Lai massacre case, where only one person, and William Calley. It goes on in every case in your hamlet. Anywhere there's a Supreme Court or a Superior Court, Supreme or Superior Court, or a Court of Appeal, there is perjury, ex parte communications, and private decision making about the resolution or disposition of a case. It's done outside the courtroom. It's a violation, and they do it relentlessly and willingly. And any lawyer who denies what I just said, any judge who challenges me, is a bald-faced liar. Okay, you got that? They're a bald-faced liar. You're a bald-faced liar because it goes on all the time. And I've seen judges do it. I've seen district attorneys do it. I've seen, I have personally seen defense lawyers do it, and civil defense lawyers do it. Yes, they do it like birds and bees. All right. So we know in Kentucky, for example, Judge Kevin Mullins snorted cocaine off of his desk and used the women's prison as a bordello, as his personal source of orgies and free sex. That's right. Superior Court Judge Kevin Mullen of Kentucky used the jail as a prostitution ring in conjunction with the sheriff, okay, who ran the jail. The sheriff runs the jail. The judge doesn't run the jail. You can't run a bordello out of the jail and probation office unless you have the complicity and cooperation of the sheriff, and the sheriff's deputies, who are all complicit, either directly or they don't whistleblow. That's called Code of Omerta, Secrecy Code. All the judges are sworn to a code of obedience and secrecy. They'll deny it, but it's true. They never rat for drunk driving. The sheriff or police do not ticket them. They escort them home safely. They are not prosecuted under the law. Judges and attorney generals and district attorneys and Supreme Court judiciary are exempt under maritime law. It's a fact. You can deny it, but the facts speak for themselves. All right. So, what I'm telling you is ex parte communications are like breathing. Judges do it many times per minute. All right. Then we have this thing that the judiciary refers to as judicial notice. Judicial notice. This is the concept of accepting perjured testimony as being truthful, that you don't call it out, you accept it and let the transcriber type it up. It is also looking at planted evidence and assuming it was found in the natural course of duty, even though it could have been a warrantless search plant. declaring warrantless search in plain view when they where things were not in plain view, but you could use judicial notice. A judge could deem something underneath a bed to be in plain view, even though it's hidden underneath the bed. So, in other words, the judge can do pretty much anything they want without having signed any search warrant. So that's called judicial notice. It can go to the destruction of evidence. It can go to the acceptance of perjured testimony, including, for example, improper notification where you're supposed to mail a notice or use a processing server to serve a subpoena and you deliver it to the wrong address, for example, the judge can declare through judicial notice that it was intended to go to the address, but there was a mix up, and I will overlook the wrong address and just assume that the subpoena was served, even though it was served to the wrong in the neighborhood, right? That maybe you got the digits on the address mixed up, right? 642 was 624. I mean, it's complicated, right? All right. So, what I'm telling you is the concept in the judiciary of judicial notice is a complete felony crime, in my opinion. No judge should have the authority to accept perjured testimony, but they do in a martial law military tribunal court. They do. They can make a rabbit appear out of a hat. They can, right? Right. They can. All right. What else we got here? So you have liars, lying, and out and out lying. And another example that I have personal experience with is that the sheriff's deputies can steal evidence that was obtained under a legal, lawful search warrant from your car, from your home, um, and taken to the sheriff's department and booked into a locker sealed. And then when your trial is concluded, you go back to ask for your evidence back, and they tell you that it was thrown out. But the evidence in the evidence locker is gone. That went missing, was thrown out. When the sheriff tells you that something was thrown out, what they mean to say is it was stolen or fenced or taken to a pawn shop and sold. There are examples of all of those things happening in real life, including my case. So I'm telling you that sheriffs do like laptop computers, they like cell phones, they like artistic elements they might find in the wall of your home, on the wall of your home, or on display above your fireplace, and they just take them and take them home, or they gift them at Christmas to members of their family. Yeah, they do. They really do. The sheriff steals things out of the evidence locker. They of all criminal cases will be plea agreement and will not go to trial. So there won't be any evidence or jury because there's generally not going to be a jury. 98% of the time, not going to be a jury. And they can kind of decide like who is going to trial and who isn't. And typically, who goes to trial is a poor person who doesn't have anything worth stealing by the sheriff. So you see, they will steal from anyone who lives in an expensive house or drives an expensive car. I would say the sheriff that'd be a green light. You can steal everything you find because there's never going to be a jury trial in this case. All right, I hope that doesn't pop anyone's bubble who used to watch Perry Mason, but I'm just telling you that barristers, solicitors, attorneys, and lawyers are aware of everything I just said, and they'll all deny it to the public because they too are under the code of silence, code of omerta, just like the sheriff is, just like all the judges, like Kevin Mullins are. They can run prostitution ring out of the jail and the probation office of women who are on probation on an anklet system under home arrest, and they can schedule and pimp out and book the women who are on probation under the threat that they'll be sent back to the jail 24/7. Do you see how corrupt the system is? I mean, it is. It's a very corrupt system. All right, now let me turn to my next favorite subject, which of course is banking, or what we call institutional fraud involving are trusted bankers who, of course, cannot be trusted. So the first thing you should know is that all the big banks have what's called trust departments, which is named to fool you, right? That you can trust them. You get a safety deposit box. You go to the trust department and they have a security guard with a toothless German Shepherd and they're protecting your items. You notice the bank is closed on many of the days, the holidays, so you can't look at your things because of the fact that the bank is often closed. We call that a bank holiday. I call it closed for business. Why is a Subway sandwich operation or a Round Table Pizza franchise, why are they open 7 days a week, but the trust department of a bank is not? All right, that they have a vault, but it's usually locked and closed, right? All right, so they have all kinds of things. They have institutional trading and traders, and they have institutional trading departments with the fancy, expensive computers, whereupon they have securities that they don't physically have access to, but there's CUSIP serial numbers on them, just like automobiles have vehicle ID numbers, VIN, vehicle identification numbers on all registered cars, cars to be registered, unsold cars to be registered, they all have VIN numbers. Well, all securities registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, debenture bonds, and common stocks and preferred stocks, they all have identification CUSIP numbers and are logged into a database which is maintained by Bankers Trust Company in New York on Manhattan Island, right? So it sounds like it's really good accounting, right? Except it's not because you Bankers Trust Company in New York is a no access place. It exists only for the bankers, not the bank's customers. When you open an account at a bank or a brokerage firm and your securities are turned over to the bank, you'll never see those securities again the rest of your life. They are supposedly taken to Bankers Trust Company in New York. That's where 99% of all securities are held, is in New York, except that they won't let you in the building. So for all I know, they all burned in a bonfire or they resold them to Swiss bankers or turn them over to Geneva or Bern or Zurich or something because they're not there. But they won't let you in. You can't audit it. It's an unauditable entity of the bankers. Now, this opens the door for tremendous fraud by bankers. It's called hypothecation, rehypothecation. In the case of automobiles going missing, like Scott Erickson driving off a car, Mercedes with a $150,000 car because someone gave him the keys and he failed to register it, but he's using dealer plates, DLR plates. That's called selling out of trust. When you drive a car for demonstration purposes off a lot, then you take it home and put it in your garage and you keep it there for 6.5 years, never paying for the car, never registering the car. Of course, you can't register the car because you don't have a pink slip because you didn't buy it because you stole it. Well, you borrowed it. You borrowed it. And that's what bankers will say. When bankers steal from you, they will say that they merely loaned out your security. They most definitely didn't steal it because they're part of a market making group, a cartel, a cabal of other bankers. Where guess what? They all do it. They all do hypothecation and rehypothecation. That is where instead of going and getting the physical security, they just trade a virtual version of your security and they'll sell your security five, six, seven, eight, 9 times, which is a way of increasing the money supply of America, depending upon the velocity of the use of the money. If the money is just put into savings, then it has zero velocity, right? Zero, zero. But if it's put into buying consumer goods, then that will cause inflation. Inflation is the hypervelocity of excess supply over demand of dollars. But by hoarding money and putting it into savings, that is a deceleration of inflation. It's the shrinking of the money supply. All right. Anyway, I don't want to get too esoteric. I just want you to know that when a bank calls themselves a trust department, you should run. You should flee the scene. Get your stuff and leave. All right. The vault, the security guard, the toothless German Shepherd, those are all furniture to create the illusion that they're valuable things. I'm here to tell you that in your typical vault, you will find the most expensive item is the photocopy machine, and then a bunch of cheap IKEA furniture, and maybe the carpet. That's it. File cabinets, carpet, photocopy machine, maybe a conference table. That's the most valuable items within a vault. Yeah, it's possible you could have diamonds or gold bricks inside of a safety deposit box, but for the most part, that's off limits. Even to the box holders, it's off limits because the bank is closed a lot. Okay, so bankers use the vocabulary terms hypothecation, rehypothecation, selling out of trust, flooring lines, CUSIP numbers, but never actually showing the physical security with the CUSIP number in plain view. They don't, they give you the number, but they won't show you the physical security. That's a form of magic, deception, right? Sleight of hands, get it? Institutional trading is just pseudo bankers trading amongst themselves using virtual securities engaged in and education. In other words, thick as thieves, right? It's a league of thieves. They're all ripping people off. And then the New York Stock Exchange, that's a price fixing organization. That's a centralized chandelier bidding rigging organization. If you read the legend for the New York Stock Exchange. They say they provide important financial market help and services like price stability, market stabilization programs. That is applied linguistics for rigging the prices, fixing the prices, insider trading, um, front running. Those are the terms, front running where you cut in line because you know it's a long line and the price is going up. So you cut in line to buy it cheap when the price is low, and then you step out of line and the price goes up after you bought. That's called front running. That's what's done at the New York Stock Exchange. They do the reverse of that when you have a redemption window, which is a sales window, and you have a purchasing window. When they see that the line is longer for redemption, they bail out early. They cut in line to sell before the price tanks. That's the New York Stock Exchange. I've always said that the entire operation could be moved to Craigslist overnight, and you would just completely disenfranchise the banking system because you could run the whole thing. You'd have no price stabilization, but you know what? You'd have actually free trade. You'd have true discovery of correct pricing because everything you see on television with the MSNBC financial shows with Jim Cramer and David Faber and all of those clowns that you see on TV, those are fake prices on fake companies. The price of Amazon and Elon Musk and Tesla and Apple Computer, $2 trillion, Nvidia, $1.9 trillion for metaverse, virtual reality companies is fake. Okay, it's not worth that. Fake is not worth $2 trillion. Apple Computer is not worth 2 trillion. But the stock market, because of its anti-competitive pricing and front running, which is called chandelier bidding, there are many names for things. All right, now let me turn my attention to the pseudoscientists, people like Jennifer Doudna, who has a Nobel Prize, and people like her second husband, Jamie Cates, who runs Innovative Genomic Institute, or her mini-me version of herself, Jennifer Doudna's PhD advisory student, is Rachel Horowitz, who's the CEO of Caribou Biosciences. She's only 40 years old. She's a marathon runner running around in aluminum chalk smart dust. She cannot be too intelligent. They're involved with CRISPR, and you know what CRISPR is. All the paid members of my show, of course, know what CRISPR is. They're all part of CRISPR. And CRISPR military acronym that means, listen carefully, people, and I will provide links below so you don't need to take notes now. Clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. I'm sure you got that the first time. Shall I repeat for you? CRISPR is an acronym meaning clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. It's to Frankenstein damage your DNA cellular structure of your body. It's to damage your molecules. called molecular engineering. It's also called neuromodulation, which is the physiological process by which a given neuron will use one or more chemicals to regulate diverse populations of neurons. Neuromodulators typically bind to a metabotropic G protein coupled receptor. That is a military acronym called GPCRS, right? G protein coupled receptor, GPCRS. This initiates a second messenger signaling cascade that induces a broad, long lasting signal. This neuromodulation can last for hundreds of milliseconds up to several minutes in length. That's what Jennifer Doudna does. That's what Rachel Horowitz does. That's what Jamie Kate does. They're involved in neuromodulation, Frankenstein monstering, turning perfectly healthy human cells into asymmetrical cancerous cells. They bring you cancer through tethering you to the cloud 24/7, right? That's what CRISPR Therapeutics in Zug, Switzerland is all about. Don't forget they have offices besides Switzerland, which is near Liechtenstein, and Zurich. They are also located in London, England, Boston, Massachusetts, along the Charles River, and they are also in Mission Bay, San Francisco, of course, off of Phoebe Hearst Avenue in Berkeley. They're actually on Berkeley Way, um, 51 Berkeley Way. They've got a lab, and they have a subsidiary laboratory off of Highway 13, the Earl Warren Freeway, with Jennifer, pardon me, with Rachel Horowitz's company called Caribou Biosciences, which is just one block off Highway 13, in one block north of Emeryville in Berkeley. It's in the city of Berkeley, the city limit of Berkeley, near the aquatic park, there in the city of Berkeley, near the Berkeley Pier and the Berkeley Marina. All right, so scientists use terms like neuromodulation, molecular engineering, CRISPR acronyms to conceal what they're really doing, which is human augmentation. When you turn a human cell into asymmetrical damage, you are Frankenstein monstering people. But rather than telling you what they're really doing, which is to injure humans using radiation poisoning, Havana syndrome, that's what they're doing. They use terms like molecular engineering, CRISPR therapeutics, there's nothing therapeutic about getting cancer, and neuromodulation. Okay, it has other names too, smart dust, mesogens, okay, uh, particulates, smart dust for dumb people, dumb dust, biosensors when it gets in your body, uh, environmental sensors when it's in the air, in the soil, in the water. It's a geo sensor. When you get a COVID vaccine or an Omicron booster, you are getting a biosecurity bioweapon. In other words, you're tethered to the cloud like being chipped. It's a high dosage of smart dust, which are plastic polymers and aluminum, graphene, arsenic, titanium, strontium, and barium, and other God knows what recipe um, items put into your body in high concentrations. All right, so let me just check my time here. I'm at 33, magical 33 minutes. So I'm going to just wrap up and say that we looked at the judiciary, known as our legal martial law, maritime law system. We looked at some of the vocabulary words and terminology there, like judicial notice, ex parte communication, perjury, suborning perjury. There's two types of perjury where someone lies for their own benefit, like Scott Erickson does, or there's suborning perjury. People like Royce Clayton, for example, who must have been threatened with felony crimes so that he would be compelled to tell a fake story, incomplete fake story, which he did. He's an old chum of steroid buddy, two Major League Baseball players, Royce Clayton and Scott Erickson, two bald-faced liars, two pathological liars who took steroids and teach high school kids and work with high school kids on how to take steroids and go to the weight room and hit a baseball. That's what they do. In other words, they lie, they're liars, and they're also out and out liars when they do it on a witness stand in front of a clueless judge, Huey Cotton. Clueless. All right? Clueless, but in the cult of America Code. Then we went over to the bankers and we talked about chandelier bidding, also known as price fixing, front running, where you cut in front of other customers, legitimate customers that could be at Craigslist, doing this whole operation over there. But instead, we have to go through the New York Stock Exchange so that we pay money to people who are worthless. Custody and clearance, trust department, trust operations, selling using hypothecation, where you borrow someone else's security and sell it and resell it, called rehypothecation. You do it again. When you do it once, it's hypothecation. When you do it twice, it's rehypothecation. You can have hypothecations. You can steal as much as you can, and many boat anchors as you can swim with. That's how many you can steal. All right, then you have driving a brand new Mercedes off of a dealership lot and putting it in your garage for 6.5 years and driving it around for free, except for putting gas in it. That's called selling out of trust, where a car has gone missing. The dealer is paying interest on a car that is lost. Nobody knows where it is, right? Except the cars do have trackers on them and they can be tracked down if you want to track them down. Unless Aaron Valenti's in the car, then they most definitely do not want to track that car down. All right, then we looked at the pseudoscientists who try to hide behind terms like neuromodulation and CRISPR therapeutics and molecular engineering, instead of telling the truth and saying asymmetry of human cellular structure, Frankenstein monstering, and the tethering of humans to the cloud 24/7, and murdering people using manic episode, Havana syndrome, direct energy, weapon attacks, ringing in their ears, headaches, nausea. Oh, am I describing COVID like symptoms? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So, do the vaccines, the safe and effective vaccines, work in concert with neuromodulation? Of course they do. Of course they do. It means you have a strong signal when you're tethered to the cloud. Now, if you didn't get a COVID vaccine or a flu shot or an Omicron booster or a bird flu vaccine or a monkeypox vaccine or God knows whatever your doctor is pimping vaccine, then you have a weaker signal, but you still have a signal. And neuromodulation and molecular engineering is still possible, even though you don't have a vaccine. Now, if you go out and get a real ID, now you're in a pickle because they verified who you are, and they can do that with or without the vaccine. If you have a vaccine, they most definitely know who you are. If you don't, they probably know who you are, know where you live, know where you sleep, and are tracking you 24/7. That's my video for today. I hope you enjoy my lambasting the lawyers, which included judges and Supreme Court judges and Superior Court judges and appeal court judges, as well as barristers, solicitors, and attorneys, all deserving of being lambasted, since they hide behind their lexicon of terms and their mendacity of judicial notice. Take care. Have a great day. I am Shadow Band, so do share my videos with your cohorts. Bye now.